There he is.
Should we let him out?
I don't know.
Actually, let him sort of sweat it a little.
Sweat it, buddy. Sweat. Did he?
Hello. Make it on? Maybe not.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh. Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hey, buddy.
What's up?
And live in the universe.
It's nice of you to join us.
Yeah.
Welcome to your show.
Now that the host is here, we can start. Welcome to the April 15th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have David, Buddy, Edwin, Robert, and Heather, all of us discussing huge topics of grand utopianism, thought police, and what we will value in the future. Take a moment to like and subscribe below.
This guy, man. This is this guy. I like this. I like this look.
Thank you. Actually, my girl, she totally got that hat for me and coined. She actually named Fractal Branding, and with me, we were like, this was years ago. We were trying to figure out a name, and I'm like, what is it? It's electrical. What's a name that we can call all the clothing or like furniture? Because ultimately we're a furniture company. We have very high top of the line furniture, and we put this image inside of the furniture. Now we do it inside of clothing, and we're just about to do the product launch, and all of it is going to be black light reactive. So you're going to see all of the roots, not only just the shirt, but the ink as well is going to be black light reactive. So they're going to be glowing.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
And so to stay on the topic of the filamenting, I always like to
sachet kind of look.
Yeah, I just kind of put it on. Yeah, sachet. That's the word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah.
Like safety from school, like authority. I have a badge. It goes across the side. I don't know.
Yeah.
It matches the weather here. It's really super
Lightning-y?
I ran outside this morning, and it's like that.
Like that, like this, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough staircase to walk up there.
Right?
Oh yeah.
I think it's only like that because it slid off the staircase to the side. And then continued to...
Look at this.
Beautiful. Super cold. Arctic chill.
I think both of you... I got a chance to see the Niagara Falls in the wintertime. That was...
Oh, I've always wanted to.
Yes, and it is just exactly as crazy as you think.
My friend is in this movie. She actually saved my life. She saved my life twice when I was on tour 2 years ago, out at Gratitude Migration on the Jersey Shore. I was fractal branding and electrocuting on the shore there at a festival in the middle of everybody in like a circus tent. And I went to go grab both leads, and she's like, no! And I just about grabbed both leads, and that would have stopped my heart.
Would not have been good.
It's a good topic.
She's the one holding the ring right there in the back, actually, right along the front line. Her name is the other one holding the ring.
Oh, here.
Yeah, right there. She goes by Petriker, which is an awesome name.
Petriker?
Petriker, yeah. Cinder Petriker. And if you know what Petriker is, it's the smell of rain coming. The smell of the rain.
Huh.
So, you smell that dusty type of smell that's coming when the rain is advancing. That smell is actually the smell of a chemical that's released out of the trees to tell their roots to stop sucking up water because a storm is coming, and it literally comes. The smell comes out of the rocks. Petric, Petriker, like Peter, or
and ichor being blood of. Or, demon blood. I don't know what Iker really means. One of those things. You have 6 people who are trying to become your friend. They could
Right
be
now?
like me. Well, yeah, it's at the top of your thing.
Oh yeah, I
Or
have to refuse a lot of those guys,
actually,
Sorry.
I invite someone and I wait, and then if it's a girl, chances are I'm going to go, she's going to message me right now, isn't she? Ding, hello. I'm like, hello? He goes, I be single. You're being deleted because I know exactly what you are. Time to go.
I've been getting a flood of people from Syria actually trying to give me friend requests. I'm like, yeah, we're like going to war with you, and all these people are trying to friend me. I don't think that's a good idea.
Because your
Probably
profile
not.
says Norrid.
Because of what?
Because your profile says Norrid.
Oh,
Mine has, I for some reason, I have this collection of people from India. And that area, like, it's like, and occasionally you get tons of like, and Rama said this and blah, 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 blah. And they were like, and of course, sometimes you can't read what they're saying or they're going insane. I'm not sure. I've watched several people go insane on Facebook and and then eventually they're just not talking anymore. Like someone must have wrapped them up and took them away, and,
No, but I think that there's I've noticed that I've been getting like, not like a huge influx from careful who I friend, but from India, like there's a lot of interest in this particular aspect of science in young people on
Yes.
the other side of the world, and that's really cool to me. So I mean, I have one little friend that he was like 16 and he started asking me questions. So I just shoot him information, send him information and stuff, and he's been talking to me for like 2 years.
That's
and he's
awesome.
Like, really nice kid, yeah. And then like, hi man, like this morning he sent me happy birthday, so sweet. And he asked me if his friend could friend me because she was practicing English and she needed somebody that could communicate back with her in English. I was like, sure, so it's kind of nice, and it's also like we're talking about. We need somebody from the East. Like, what is the perspective of these things from the other side of the world? Because it's their world.
Yep. I got to admit my experience when I think, because I went to university and took like Eastern studies and religion, I feel like I know them or something, or because I watched anime, or because I watched some Chinese movies with Jackie Chan, like I know something, and you don't. You're not from there. You have no friggin' idea. I've learned that when I drove across the United States. Just assuming that the United States is warring because that's what you see on TV. There's a people in a desk in one side of CNN machine gunning over the desk at the other side of CNN. You conservative bastards! No, you liberal pricks! And that's what you think is going on down there. And then you actually go down there and you're like, oh, you guys aren't killing each other at all. Yeah, we all have very nuanced views that have nothing to do with television. You're like us. Like everything is like the same, but your TV's crazy. And of course they have crazy TV too. Apparently you can, have some pretty interesting Indian news broadcasts which are full of crap. So, who knows? We're all the same. Yeah, we're all the same. Yeah. Making us war against each other must be a really hard feat.
Mm-hmm.
Scare them. It's fear.
Stop it with your fear shit. Go with
Yeah.
hope.
Well,
It's better. Well, not the Obama hope. I mean, real hope. Like with the real, like, we're actually going to fucking change something. Hope? I don't know. Star Trek hope. Utopian hope or whatever.
This whole series.
utopian hope.
Well,
like
what else
that.
is it? That's what Star Trek really is. I mean, it's like no one fights as much with each other once you get into this sort of like, is it homogeneous, but people still have their culture? How is this working? But it does apparently work. And no one, your military is even friendly to each other and respects their opinions. Like, that's just, how do you manage that society?
Written that way.
Well, no, of course. That's what I mean. It's utopian. I mean, in actuality, just the way that it was envisioned by Roddenberry, that idea is pretty cool. I mean,
Right.
It's basically trying to say, we got there. We can get to a future which, has respect for other life forms and, and has learning, but yet can also be free. You can't be rigid. You have to be free. Like, how do you pull that off? And it's a very, he didn't say how. He just showed you an example of,
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of the dream, I guess I'm saying. Because, I mean, if you're not really working towards a utopia eventually, what are you really working towards? You know, so.
We all need
Dystopia.
to be grown-ups.
There you
I
go.
agree with that.
Yeah, it's just a, yeah, and, you know, recognizing the dreams of others, and we can find that, we might be able to find answers for that in the past, if we can look at them objectively and see how some of these things that we thought were major wars were probably, you know, meteor showers in the sky, you know, fighting between planets and shit like that, and move all this into a context. What did they really know? How did they really function? You know, and I find all of that to be fascinating. They seem to have a way of not killing each other. I like that. So,
Well, it's monetary system.
well, there you go. But I mean,
you should have anyway. Here's my utopia. Everyone has their own monetary system, and then there's agreement between everyone on how to trade.
okay.
Versus one monolithic tyrannical monetary system.
Well, you can't. I've learned that every time, that it's when you, it's much better to have the world subdivided, and respectful. I mean, try to be generally respectful on a business level when you have to do commerce and stuff, but most people aren't international. You know, they're local, and they're living in their local world, and they don't do what we're doing. And if they do,
the collective in that locality could have its own, you know, economic system.
well, and then if you actually extend that to the logical conclusion, the ideas of Southern California permeate across the world like a plague until they cover the whole thing. And and then, of course, like with Washington also having its own tendrils and stuff.
Right, but it's to control everyone's perception of reality.
Or maybe it's just to make money because we're suckers for that kind of
Well,
thing.
certainly that. Well, I mean, it's a type of enslavement.
Yeah,
Well,
with
we
lots
do
of
with all that power, you
glitz.
can have the money. You got to have them all. That's, you know.
If you do, which one of us is not concerned about in order to continue surviving that they have ready available cash?
Well, but the thing is that like the monetary systems are substitutions, or like a replacement for an equilateral value, right? Like we're gonna say like the gold standard, everything is in relation to what we value, what we hold gold value as, and then we exchange our goods in relation to the gold standard value. But if you don't have that gold standard value, then your goods become like it becomes supply and demand. It becomes like the need
GDP.
for, you know. Exactly. If you have this thing that someone else needs and they need it, you know, say like a pound of grain might be more valuable to someone than a pound of silver because they can't eat the silver. So if there isn't that associative line saying that the silver will buy you the grain, they really don't have the need for the silver.
Right.
That's
why in the olden days salt was used often as money. It's even the term salary comes from that still.
There is
salary comes from the Roman times.
There's
what value is? It's the determination of value. It's a very kind of individualistic or collective thing. But to have it imposed globally, what value is a very significant.
Well, just the fact that you try to put a dollar value on things that shouldn't have a dollar value. Like, we're not allowed to pump water anywhere. So we can't basically send water to you. No, we're not allowed to send our water, like in a pipeline.
Oh, in a pipeline. Okay.
So what they do is they come up here and they ball the shit out of it. And then we send trucks of it down to you guys.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, but yeah, it just comes out of, but we were trying to make a rule that we didn't want people to start draining off water because we consider it a natural resource. And, you know, and it should also, according to the UN Charter, be free. the right to water, the right to housing, the rights of the child, I think it's called, or something. I don't know. One of those things. Anyway, just I think about that, and I think about we get back to what you're describing as the fiat currency idea, which is
well, they're really the one that's right on the front end of, and whatever shape it's going to take is all this Bitcoin stuff. And there's factions going on with that, of course.
Well, of course, but
this is an interesting dynamic.
But it's not fiat currency.
Financial system. What's that?
It's not a fiat currency.
Yeah, well, what is it? I mean, it's once again crazy artificial.
Yes, crazy artificial. Not arguing with that.
All
but
currency isn't it, though?
Pardon?
All currency is crazy artificial, and it all operates under the assumption that we want there to be an economy to level out the value of all of our goods and time and person.
Well said.
Yes. And
I think the point is that we need a money system. Otherwise, we cannot trade like we do nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what you're betting on. See, by betting on it's because let me hear me out. The value placed on a United States dollar is only there as long as the United States exists. If it was suddenly turned off, or my country's dollar, your country's dollar, it doesn't matter. But if the government disappears, that money becomes worthless. Now, the same thing happens if what you're betting on with Bitcoin is you're basically saying as long as the internet exists, as long as computer powers exist and power itself, generation, electricity exists, this thing will have value. Now, that's different. That's sort of the bet.
Well, but here's the difference, too, though, is that if any of those actual monies were to fall, they have the backing of gold, right? They have gold backing. That's what gives them their value.
No.
If the money doesn't exist anymore, then they still have the gold in the Federal Reserve as a tangible substance to back up that the money idea has been liquidated in. When you liquidate a Bitcoin, it is completely virtual. There's no backing there.
No,
to a number,
and both of them can lose the trust.
I'm fine with what you're saying in theory, but that was only true up until like 1973 or something. Yeah, and then they got off the gold standard. Nixon did that, I think.
But you still have okay, but there is still gold in the Federal Reserve. I understand inflation and how all that stuff works out. But what I'm saying is that the real world, tangible money has tangible backing. It could be a house, it could be land, it could be.
Okay, well now you're getting into assets.
Reserves that they have, like Fort Knox doesn't have all the money that it used to have because it's just based on GDP now. There's a few reserves of gold, like in an absolute emergency, but that's by no means made back up the monetary system that we have. It's super inflated.
Actually,
everybody accepts it.
I guess what I'm saying though is what comes down to brass tacks is that regular monetary federal systems have some sort of tangible material backing, whether it be gold, whether it be real estate, whether it be land, whether it be machine guns, whatever it is that they have, that's a tangible, physical, real thing that holds value in relation to this money, right? When you take your money and you liquidate all of your assets into a virtual world, into a Bitcoin, you turned all of your money into a megabyte data, like number on somebody's server somewhere, and then a big EMP comes down and it goes flash, and then all of a sudden all of that money is gone and all of your assets that you have liquidated into this virtual world disappear. Bitcoin goes down, it all disappears. You no longer have that physical, tangible, material substance that held the value, the what's the word, guys? Help me out that I'm looking for here. The backing of it. Collateral.
Spine.
Yeah, you have none.
The sacroiliac.
This is really a mind. Here, let's play this mind game.
But it's just a promissory note. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's still the same thing. We're going to lose the same amount of stuff no matter what when an EMP happens.
Yeah.
Well, but you still have your home, right? You'd still have your food, your land. Still have these types.
The banks would still have gold.
The money itself has still got the same type of thing to it, where it's just a promissory note.
Well, yeah, I think we all...
You're not in possession of that actual value.
And I don't think it's really gold that's backed up on it. I think it's more based off the currency exchange for oil right now with OPEC. That's
I was going to say, it's the petrodollar. That is exactly what it is, the petrodollar. And that's what's keeping a lot of this afloat. And a lot of our economies are based off of the success of the United States economy, so we're all intertwined.
Right. That's why this BRIC treaty is what involves Russia, China, and I guess Syria now is the forerunner of this thing. If that gets initiated, the whole American dollar goes worthless overnight.
Well, I don't think worthless, but it will certainly be a currency war.
Those people, how easy would it be to shift their money into Chinese yuan as opposed to buying American dollars at our interest rate to buy their own oil?
That threat's been there forever, though.
Well, we're watching it happen in real life. So
they could cash in on their property, or anyone could cash in on their loans that they've loaned us and destroy the economy. But it's built so that it doesn't do that, and that no country can really literally do that because it's going to do more harm and detriment to them. But what's happening is anybody who pulls out of the petrodollar, we go to war with.
Exactly.
And anybody
that's what we're doing right now.
Well, yeah, but they can't go to war with Russia and China, which is why it's such a big deal. Doing it to a small country that goes, I want to be independent. And they go, sure, you could be independent. Right. And then they crush you either with the banks in Venezuela or they'll crush you with the military, like in Libya. Right. But the end result is they crush you. But you going and trying to crush Syria, well, like I said before, you can't do Syria because Syria has a Russian military base. And so they're not going to lose the Mediterranean. They just won't. I mean, this is where they spy. I mean, they have Russian trawlers come out of that place and friggin' listening to, all the information in Italy and all the traffic over here and everything going on in Israel. I mean, they're not going to lose that. That's too much. And that's the same reason why over in the other thing, the Chinese are extending their borders and putting up, shit like that, and they're playing ship games because they're basically going, this is ours now.
Building islands and claiming sovereignty.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. But that's a brilliant idea. I love them for it. But why didn't we think of that?
Well, I suppose with the Pacific Ocean being as deep as it is, and how much closer do you want?
Nation building and just doing some island building, increasing our borders and our
actually,
projection.
You could literally, that's the growth of an algorithm of a fractal. The coastline, you could just continue it and continue it and continue it and make it, with sustainable structures and building now, you could just build a infinitesimal coastline where it's like you have all of these peaks and all of these different, like the Julia set. That would be kind of cool. Where it's just a swirl. And then it's a swirl, and then, instead of straight docks that go out with light posts on it, we could build more swirly ones. Like if you look at all the architecture in Dubai and stuff like that, they're a lot more mirroring the bioarchitecture,
natural systems.
Yeah, I've seen those. The trouble is that
cool. There's floating houses and stuff, and
yeah, but I love that. But isn't it like having a garden in and amongst poison air? Like it's the same. There's a certain amount of freedom that we want to encourage, and we've lost that goal completely. Now we just trade with people who are rich dictators and stuff like that, and people who are hurting their people. We used to never do that. We used to go, hey, that's wrong. We can't trade with these people because they have human rights problems. But when when that starts getting muddy, the sort of like the evil flourishes. I don't know. I don't want to say because Dubai is not necessarily evil, but you're not allowed to talk bad about your employer or they'll put you in jail,
Oh, there's all kinds of things over there.
But I've been to Dubai, and my mom used to live in the UAE, and I know a lot of people that expats that are there, and you aren't allowed to talk like that about anybody, not just your boss.
Wow.
There's a rule there called offending another's shyness, and you will be well behaved. You will not act that way. It is unbecoming, and that is what that is. Yes, you will get fired if you talk about your boss that way, but you probably get fired if you talk shit about anybody. If you talk and if you openly argue with someone in public, that is unacceptable. You are not allowed to do that. It's disturbance of the peace.
That's crazy.
That is the way that it goes there, and that's why it's so peaceful. It's like paradise when you go there. Everybody is very polite. Everybody's very. I mean, I went to the top of the Burj Khalifa wearing a short skirt and a tank top. Nobody said anything negative to me.
Oh, I wouldn't mean that. I meant that. But that's a big problem.
But I mean, what I'm saying is that like I was definitely offending them by the way that I was dressed, but I was also it was like 112 degrees outside. That's pretty hot. I wore a tank top. Nobody said anything to me. There was lots of other tourists there. They have that respect, but I've also heard stories about people raising their voices and getting in arguments in public and
you're not supposed to do that there.
No, being asked to leave, being thrown out. If you're there on their dime and you've come there to help whatever employee they've brought you into their employ, then you're and anytime you go to another country anyway, you're supposed to accept their rules and be.
Well, I'm not saying that you can't accept their rules. I mean, I understand if you literally made the effort to go there. But that's something that we should try to discourage because that's definitely a freedom of speech problem to me.
Well, no, not necessarily, because what it does is it encourages you to speak your mind in a polite and considerate manner.
Be considerate, exactly. Same thing in Korea, by the way. The courtesy level is just really South Korea, at least. This is obviously, but very high and very. It's important to make everyone feel welcome.
The West has been trained throughout the media for decades now, and especially the last few decades, and especially the last one, to react emotionally and shout your head off.
Yes.
I've seen all that stuff in the Dutch television, but also on the American television. I don't watch television and no more for many years already, but when I did, right, and I saw the degrading thing, I can point out we actually pointed out the moment the Dutch society became more rude and more low-level thinking suddenly. It was due to a very popular show, a Dutch show, really translated Good Times, Bad Times. And it's been exported probably to many other countries. And that thing was ridiculously popular. But if you saw the people in that show, they were pretty much, how can I say neatly, the low lives.
Yeah, Jerry
so neatly, but rude in the sense of not speaking your mind in a proper way of trying to reach middle ground or let's talk about it. No, argumenting, ending up in fights. They were training people to do it that way.
Right.
Instead of a proper training you get at a corporation, right? You get all kinds of educational trainings in the corporate world. For communicating stuff.
Jerry.
Right.
You look at that. It's such a cultural.
But there are good trainings out. There really are good trainings in the corporate world out there. I've seen many people change pretty much because of it. Because finally somebody pointed out during those trainings, how to behave, how to talk, how to negotiate, how to wield influence, what kind of communication styles there are, right? And the argumenting, the pushing, we call it the pushing. The pushing is the fighting. That's the first and the lowest level, and usually leads to no results.
Right.
And this is exactly what they've been training the people through. In this case, this show, but there are many more examples.
I believe that it's on purpose. To degrade. It's to degrade your approach. It actually degrades your approach. I find it personally that's the case. I'm much more apt to because it'll have an effect to throw an insult. There's a lot of fire in it, and that can be exciting and kind of childishly funny. But and I'm still apt to do that. It's obviously, but it's a degrading of the harmony of the culture.
Well, if I now I've heard your arguments, and number one, World Island, really cool, loving that, but.
Oh, thanks.
I think that I'm not arguing your interpretation of that. In fact, I think that you're fairly right on everything that you said, and I think that Heather wasn't lying or anything. So but for example, we're generally considered polite here. No, shut up. And
hey, don't tell me to shut up.
I just did, and I will tell you again.
How Well, right there.
You
that's
told me
all-
to shut up, and
Hey.
That was like 2 blocks away from there.
That's still really
Really?
cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
when I was in the Navy, I was in Dubai for a while. I was made a
But
sport visit.
let me just finish my thought. We're known to be polite where I'm from, and great. But we don't have a law
What happened to you?
that you're not allowed to argue. You're not allowed to scream your head off and whatever and disturb the peace. Yes, I guess we got that. That's the same as everything else. But I do know that in the United Arab Emirates, for example, even on Facebook, you can't complain about things like, it's considered an impolite, and impolite is enforced by law. Now, there's a principle that has to be understood here and just and appreciated, that there's a certain amount of, I guess you could call it, what's the word? Not shyness. God, it's, here I am trying to think of a word that basically it has to do with recognizing when you come to an impolite point, and where you can't sometimes have to be, or critical directly. You have to say it in a harsher tone to get something across. But you don't have to necessarily be incredibly rude or denigrate the other person. But there's still the laws that enforce that are matters of politeness, like people judging that to be rude or judging that to be improper. And the punishment for that is is basically being called a dickhead, or, basically politely told to whatever. But the point is, people avoid you or whatever because you're a dick, and
Well, it depends on but it's a collective agreement.
But to be thrown in
But
jail
this is
for it is where the principle.
This part can get impeached through the media so quickly, and it's like, and Jerry Springer is a prime example of that.
True. But we were also, at least when we and you were growing up,
Yeah.
That we were taught very clearly that this is all pretend. This is that TV is pretend
But
land.
it doesn't. Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, it still affects you on many levels, of course.
And you have to recognize that.
We were part of an experiment.
Yes, and it was a bad one, very bad.
It was a bad, and how dare
Movies I like because it had a beginning and an end, and you walk away.
Whoever makes them it will happen naturally, but their perspective and their imperatives will be injected into it on many levels.
Okay, so this sounds great, but here's where this all gets in. It's called hushing, by the way, or debate, making the debate get quiet so that people, it basically is a hush effect over, like, people knowing that they're being spied on, act a different way if you know that you're being recorded, that type of thing. And this is
by the way, you're being recorded.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't hurt me as bad. But
just to let you know.
Isn't that what we're living in right now with Mathicon?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it becomes but the thing is that because someone like or some places like Dubai are able to spend their money and be rich, now they can influence outside of an area, and we begin to think that it's okay to put people in jail for being rude. And I just don't hold to that. I think that there has to be.
This is the nature of having a global economy where you have just a few in control of it, where they can do something just as extravagant as throw all the money that goes into Dubai.
Well, basically, the Western culture used to use their amount of money as influence to make places more humane. Basically, if you're going to be cool, in the white hat, black hat world, in the 1960s world or whatever we had going on there. Although there was tons of war, we were told, at least, that we were doing this to influence humanity. We would never deal with countries that do this. And now it's like, well, yeah, they chop people's head off and don't let women drive, but Saudi Arabia is great for us. Like, huh? Why are we doing this? We should probably rethink this whole thing. because we're not helping the people there. I mean, sure, we might make their lives better, but,
Didn't they allow the women to drive there now?
No, they allowed robots to drive.
This gets into when you crack this shell open, it gets into a lot of really, like the indictments that are going around and the Saudi priests that, and princes that have all been excommunicated, and like all of these CEOs at these top companies stepping down, and like, there's a lot of stuff going on right now where the Panopticon all of a sudden turned around and it's looking at itself in the
yes,
and it's saying, look at your shadow, cover your tracks, move on, call yourself something else. And that's how when we start getting closer and closer to what the quote unquote Illuminati is, they change names and they move on, and really, it's really just Britain. It's really just the crown. It's ultimately, like, what is it? It's just deeper structures and organisms that are extremely orthodox and religiously detailed in refinement. That's why they call it the military-industrial complex, because it is. Well, that's also. Hang on. If you let me finish my thought. If you think about it, the military is the most structurally impervious system that we try to build. So therefore, it's going to be the most intricate and interconnected and disciplined. And so you have all of these the highest end people in all of the world working on this organism, the technium, if you will, which is what it's turning into. And all of our sovereignty is already signed over to a larger organism from these other organizations and organisms and ideas, which that's all they are, is just ideas. Everything in reality is abstract ideas, and we just let them proliferate, or we try to castrate them. And this organism, this construct that's built is like pretty much like Google and all of these high tech companies. That the what's that one that builds for the military and the high craft? But anyway, all of this stuff comes together and builds what has been happening, and now we've invited them in our home so that our walls can talk and give them data 24/7 with the Google Home, all these other spying devices. I mean, arguably the phone is the greatest one, but then, like, if you leave your phone in your car, they want to hear what goes on with you and your wife. They want to hear what goes on with you and your kids for data farming and data collection and data harvesting. And none of us really know.
It's backfired on them.
Yeah, none of us really know how big this is.
Well, you start thinking about it, and it's absolutely just jaw-dropping. Still there?
Yeah.
All these people, like, you're worth like a lot of money. This goes
to someone else.
Number when you're born. They expect you to make a certain amount of money for society when you're born. People can pay into you, and you can start building profit on your serial number and your code, your barcode, and you get more wealthy and wealthy, and they expect you to pay all your taxes on all that money, and they keep track of all of it. If you want to look at what the real panopticon is, it's Israel. Israel is building and has built the largest intelligence complex in the world that's capable of tracking almost every human now on the planet. They want to.
How dare they?
Well, that's what they're doing. And
when did I agree to that happen?
It doesn't. None of this. This isn't right now. Arbitration.
An invasion of personal.
Yes.
personal integrity.
To the highest degree. Everything is being stolen without your consent constantly, and none of us are aware of this yet. And Mark Zuckerberg, he had the audacity to say that he was gonna. He actually put in a request to say that if he could sit on a pile of his money when he was talking in court this week. But they told him he couldn't sit on his money, so he asked for a high chair, and he probably put his money inside of it anyway. This is the kind of shit.
I like the line. I watched some of that, and I like the line where they asked him, "Would you share what hotel you're staying at?" And he said no.
Of course. And
well, why would he?
Well, that's part of it. It's part of this. Is
exactly.
Because they know where you are all the time. Anyway, I mean, this is absolute hypocrisy.
It's a lie. He's sitting in the judgment seat, and guess what? They're asking him to help write the code and the rules, the rule book for arbitration, because there isn't any right now. He's sitting in the seat, and they're like, "Hey, man, you've got a monopoly on this. You want to help write the rules?"
Yeah, that I've always found this to be incredibly weird. Like, there seems to be. See, I'm sure that others are, but in this case, whenever I hear something like this, that boggles my mind. Because my first instinct is like, oh, we have a problem. All right, identify problem. Okay, what do we need to do? We need to have something that can tackle this set of circumstances, say Facebook monopoly and the data mining and whatever this is. Okay, so what are you going to do? We're going to get this team, and we're going to go and get them to go figure it out. You know, and you hire a whole whack of fucking smart people who really know what the hell they're talking about, and they're going to come here and they're going to explain this to us in a way that we can make it, so we can make an informed decision. And then we will act on that information. That to me is how you'd solve something like this. But when I hear about it, like, what benefit would this be to have this guy in front of you? I mean, it's a monkey show. This has to be for show. This can't be real.
Yeah.
You know, we are much more intelligent than that as human beings. We know how to do this in real life, like how you would solve the problem. I've just met you people are intelligent enough to understand how to just generally identify and solve a problem, is all I meant. So.
This is a good one.
Why do we not
try to solve?
I mean, just why is this, it's fostered on people, but they're not explaining it like in fact, I don't even know if people go to Parliament to get testified.
I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Mann at all, but he was one of the kind of nutty characters back in the 90s, and he's the father. I'm familiar with him because he's the father of virtual reality, but he was building all these things with like 8086s and just like he would absolutely just trick himself out with all this, but wear a homemade PC with all these exotic cameras and stuff. But he came up with this concept, which is where, if surveillance is all over, and it obviously proliferated quite exponentially. But the thing that they didn't really see was it looks back the other way, and the focus, just looking at lenses, etc., is not in their favor in this case, and it's one of those, oops, I didn't see that part of the thing as I was trying to make sure that I could control everyone. It actually looks the other way. It looks back at me, and this is where they're screwed, because it's a magnifying glass, like how a magnifying glass works, all the way back right at one central point.
Yes.
Yeah, and this
is where we're in the advantage, where we're actually in the catbird seat, bizarrely enough.
And and the beginning of this is the Rodney King thing.
That's right. Why can't we all get along?
Well, that's where it started, and then now we're at the point where every human being carries a camera, and my car is going to have a camera on the front and back next time I travel.
That arguably makes everything safer too. It's safer than guns. If you think about it, cameras everywhere, the Panopticon allows for safety and security. Think about it. If someone wants to charge you for, murder or something, but you have your phone on you and you know it's being tracked constantly and you're not there, you're done. You can prove that you weren't there. How are you going to get that data from Google that shows that you were over here with your phone? Oh, and how are you going to prove that you were with your phone?
Well, you can just log into Google whatever, and it'll tell you where you've been.
But there's also the
someone could take your phone though, and you could trick it and say that you were over here. Just because your phone's there doesn't mean you were there. You got to prove you were there, maybe with a transaction or something.
Yeah,
but,
that's a double-edged sword though, because you can also the censoring of free speech just because of political views. Because, like we said, we're going into a global economy. Some countries aren't really cool with criticism from people.
But that's what fake news is going to do.
But that's
the censoring of fake news is going to censor the real people, and they're going to tell you can't say that. They're going to say it's fake news. Then it's going to censor everything we say. And there's a huge movement in fake news as far as faking faces, faking voices, all of this digital manipulation, and I forget the word for it, but. The real fake news is going to be the next presidency campaign. We're going to see all sorts of fake videos of people saying things that isn't real. But it's their real voice and their real face moving.
Interestingly,
so we're not going to be able to tell the difference.
Interestingly, I understand the benefits of the quote unquote panopticon. It sounds like it can be safe. But clearly, it can have the hushing effect or the silencing effect, or people won't say certain things, and when they're totally within their rights to say certain things. This is where the argument comes in. Something else that you don't know is that things like YouTube can silence per area. Like, for example, there's been lots of instances where I can watch something and I link it to my friend, and it's like, I can't watch that here.
Yeah.
And it's like
me calling you, like me trying to call you doesn't happen because it says that I need a card.
Well, you're calling, and you got to call long distance because I'm not in America. So I'm although our numbers are very similar, and a lot of packages now are becoming anywhere within North America. Because, that's what's basically happening. But it's still an international border, and there are different laws, so...
Yeah, like at my house, I can't call Windsor. And yeah, it's closer than calling Buddy.
Well, we've all been spoiled by the idea that your phone package includes everywhere within, all across the continental United States. But where I'm... I'm positive that you guys had to experience long distance charges just calling the next city over.
I guess what he's saying, what the bottom line is there are definite perimeter boundaries. There's definite perimeter boundaries. There is a line where I can call the next county. I actually am I am right inside one area code, and outside like across the street is literally a different area code than the one I have.
Yeah.
And then across the river is another country. There's absolutely no problem with me calling the other area code. It's dialed in that is a U.S. area code. The second you dial 517 or 519 or whatever it is,
right.
You can't get through. Oh, it's 519 and 517 is in Michigan. So just that one number will change the direction and say, okay, now this is under a different block and key. We can't get under. You can't call over there. It's just there's definite lines. And it's also to do with censorship laws and what's acceptable to one country is what I mean. Like British TV puts nudity on their nighttime TV on regular shows. The United States doesn't do that, so it falls.
Yeah, we do have that here. You could do that. You could see that. You could be dealing with it.
Yeah. There's those levels of censorship, certain words that some people, like the bad words that aren't allowed to be said or whatever. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with topic content as much as actual content, like what's in there, by swearing on this show or, when we post these, we kind of limit ourselves because by swearing, you take away an audience that you're not, what I mean? You're supposed to say explicit content or something. There's certain audiences that now we aren't allowed to be open. Like my kids under my parental blocks or whatever that are on their stuff wouldn't be able to access this show because we say bad words.
Fuck that.
Fuck that. Well,
that
all
I
their-
never even thought of, by the way. That's very interesting.
Freedom. Yeah.
Well, no, but it's not something we have here very much. Like you can.
Well, that can open up the whole discussion of the fucking frick fact, from Battlefront.
Yep.
What they played that off of. But it's just the whole. It's the emotion behind the word, really.
Caution.
Right. That's
Well,
what invokes the power. It's a word that is supposed to invoke power. That's all it is. It's not meant to be offensive because you can use it as an adjective. That's fucking beautiful.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, in whatever. I mean, what do you do with that thing? What is, and this is cultural. I think the decision of whatever that the natal nationness, how they define their thing, like how Italy rolls and how France rolls, and then how Sweden rolls are very different in regard to this issue. What's the vernacular?
Right. I mean, everybody understands the word "fuck" as much as they understand.
But it's rude. It's ultimately rude, right? I mean,
no.
I think it's unfair. It's just a word that is supposed to invoke power. It's like an enhanced adjective.
Look at how bold I am to throw this, and you're throwing a concept too, of course.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It goes down to the root word, right? Where's the word come from? And those words are considered cursing because they do carry a negative vibration with them. And some people,
unlawful carnal knowledge.
Right, and also when you are like if I'm trying to teach my kids when, where, and how, when's appropriate, when's not appropriate, what's not appropriate, how is it appropriate, how is it not appropriate, and it's very important for them to be able to form thoughts, fully sentenced thoughts in their heads without those words in them. It's important for them to be able to express and to be able to use those words. Now it is it's scientifically proven over and over. I don't know who does the surveys that people who use explicit language tend to be more intelligent, more thought process. You know what I mean? Into what they're saying. I don't really know the legitimacy of those.
Actually,
claims,
that does make sense.
Yeah, but I do know that when I hear my kids drop something on their toe outside, they're 10 years old, they'll say, shit. I'll hear them. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to check them on that. You know what I mean? And when they're kind of playing with each other, I might hear one of them say, swear what the hell at another one. I will check them on that. If you say something to or where there's adults, if you say damn it or any of that, and I check them on saying Jesus and God in vain too, because that's swearing. And you need to know that when you're out in public, some people are offended by that. And it isn't just a filtration of their freedom of speech. They have the freedom to express what they need to say, but they need to do it with respect. To have the respect of the listener, of the people within earshot, of the people who have to absorb that thought that they're just throwing out there. If you want me to be respectful of your freedom of speech, could you please be respectful of my freedom of listening? Because I don't want to have to hear that shit all the time. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
Hey.
Actually, you're
who you're talking to. If that's what they use that word like every third word, like a sailor does, and then it's okay and it's accepted. Then that's how you communicate better with that person, as opposed to being so formal.
Right.
So just you got to
It's also an expression of familiarity, trust.
Well, true.
Throw it around.
But she's right. What she's expressing is something that I obviously don't think about, which is parenting and stuff like that. I don't have children, but the idea that it could be offensive is only it's held in certain areas. Like you wouldn't go screaming words like that in a full mall, like that would be bad. Occasionally just casually talking, no one can usually hear you within a few feet, so it's not exactly like but now that with the world where everyone can hear exactly what you're saying all the time, and we're recording it.
Even when you're whispering.
No, there's merit to being generally courteous. So, but obviously, Robert also is correct that there's no reason to fear these words. It's almost ridiculous in this day and age. However, we should, because there's no cursing actually involved in our. I mean, it would be a mental thing all in our heads if it was, and that's just very. But obviously, without. Okay, well, you can disagree in a second because I was wondering if I formed that thought thoughtfully myself. I was like, well, I don't know if I fully am I right there. I don't know, but anyway.
Nope.
Okay. Well, pick that part apart in a second. But what I really wanted to say was that you're going to that sometimes using these words for emphasis at certain points, or like for example, what you just said, I don't want to deal with that shit, or
situation.
That's fine by me. I think that's fine by most people in a regular society now amongst regular adults. So yeah, you wouldn't want to go dropping F-bombs in front of children. But I think anyone who's had a father that worked on machinery will tell you you're going to hear them at the age of 5.
I have to argue. I saw this was something that they put out where there's little kids just throwing the F-bomb all over the place to be cute, and it was something that was produced out here. They were using it as kind of like, oh look, this is the new freedom that we have, and they're all of like 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, I saw that.
And it's like, completely inappropriate, and there's a lot of people.
I think that would be inappropriate, of course.
Yeah, I thought that was a little off.
It's a taboo, and they're emphasizing it for the purposes of fame, and that doesn't seem to be.
But they were
I felt like they were doing it to show people how inappropriate it is when your children go around acting this way, and how did that make you feel? It made you feel.
It's definitely a failure of society on the whole. But please go ahead and tell me the argument against my point there, because I like I said, it wasn't completely fully formed. I want to hear a better, about cursing. I guess it was.
Cursing because those particular words. I mean, damn to be damned, right? And fuck. Okay, we can go into the that comes from from plucking a string, and then they would cut your finger off the
or unlawful carnal knowledge.
They would cut your middle finger off, and you couldn't pull the bow back anymore to shoot, and then they would flip you off because they had that finger, and they would say pluck you because they had their finger and they could still shoot their bow back at you. You can
actually, fuck is an acronym for unlawful carnal knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But is it?
Yes.
No, I mean, I've heard so many different things over time. So
I guess to get back to the point though is that certain words do carry a certain vibration with them, and when you say those words, you evoke that. Like we talked about this before, how your thoughts form words and your words form actions, because when you put that energy out there and you vocalize it, you have created that vibratory energy vortex that manifests itself in some way.
Okay.
And so you got to learn how to spell.
How else are you filtering the feeling is all.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, words do filter feelings. I can see that. Yeah.
And then to take certain words that weren't necessarily curse words and put that sort of energy on. Okay, so bitch. Well, bitch is a female dog mom, right? Yeah. And to say, so you're a female dog mom. Well, now I'm going to call you a bitch. Well, now all of a sudden, now you've got an attitude, you're a specific type of feeling. You know what I mean? And then when you think about somebody acting that way, you say they're bitching. It's like, okay, so what does that really have to do with this female dog who just had a baby or had puppies? You know what I mean? Really, it doesn't have anything to do with that. But you've now taken a word and villainized that word. You've cursed that word. And now when you use that word, you are cursing.
Well, hey, look, French is different too. So
all the implications of what that is, and it's to get back to what we're talking about, is that it's got all this recursive rings to it, Right. For instance, it's used as I own you, right? It's like I'm not your bitch, or I'm your bitch, that thing, And it's like that's a very interesting implication for that word.
I think that all children must watch more South Park, and this will all become apparent.
Well, there's another example of degrading of culture.
Well, yeah,
Right.
but no, is
funny.
it?
It's funny as hell. It's funny as hell. Yes.
No. I mean, no. But it is.
It's funny as
It's
hell.
clearly satire, and it's educational now. They've gone really crazy on that, but.
Somebody who's got enough education and wherewithal to process that as a satire, but to many who are ignorant or
kids. I mean, kids love that thing, and it's teaching them about society.
Oh, I would never actually let kids watch that. I mean, it's something that you might sit down with your 14 or 15-year-old one time and go,
"Come on, 3-year-old, 4-year-olds watch that." I guarantee.
Are you out of your mind? Literally.
What kind of like positing are you doing to me? Because I'm serious.
No, but I mean, 3-year-olds watching South Park. I just meant that blows my mind.
Out of my mind. You know this already.
Oh,
right?
Fair enough.
So why ask a rhetorical question?
But anyway, okay. So, we were back on cursing. We were cursing.
Things before breakfast.
Yes. I suppose you could say that there is a power in the words,
it's got
but
a degrading element to it. It lowers any type of level of inspirational. What's the right word for it? Aspiring to any type of virtuous spirit. It's all sarcastic and sardonic, and
Pacing.
now,
it's basically ridiculing everything. It's all about ridicule. So.
Okay. No, okay.
That's a feeling that needs to be filtered.
But then you forget the greats like George Carlin and Eddie Izzard.
Well, but this is another example of this. Like, how do you find a balance?
Perfectly
of that?
placed.
We don't have any. We don't have any avenues to have any control of that.
Well, that's why it came back down to you just got to remember who you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, I suppose you're right, Robert. You're right. You do have to really think about who you're dealing with, and but there is that time when in a humorous situation or anything where a muted shit like it's just a perfect thing to put in that statement. It exemplifies exactly what you were saying, and it's descriptive in the way it's said. That. I suppose it's really hard to imagine, but there's a part of me that maybe I'm idealist or something that I think that there could be a elevated swear words.
It represents a time. No, I mean, I have it in my vernacular pretty hard, but it represents a time, and it's interesting. Like each of these times, they feel like they understand what the moral that the moral imperative and the moral authority. But it has this really wild swing to it, over time.